Hi everyone, my name is Courtney Morris. Welcome to my kitchen. This is Old Fashioned Rations, and I have discovered that I have a lot of cookbooks and a lot of recipes that I've never done anything with, and I feel bad getting rid of them, so I figured, you know what, why don't we try some? I'd love for you to come with me, come join me in my kitchen, and let's see if they're any good. So the first cookbook that I pulled out of interest to me was the Victory Cookbook by Marguerite Patton. This one's actually kind of new to me. I only got it in the past couple of years and I haven't done anything with it. I have read through it though, and there's a ton of history in it. They have articles and they actually put this together really well. This is an amalgamation of the recipes that were used to keep Britain healthy on very basic ingredients, because while the British people were rationed, a lot of the food that they would normally have was going over to the soldiers to help them with the war effort. And I find it fascinating that there's so many different recipes that came out of this that is basically using next to nothing. Really, next to nothing. It's crazy. So I was looking in here for a recipe to try. There's some weird ones. There definitely are, and we might get into those. But I did also want to do something like mashed potatoes because I do that every Sunday. So I chose bacon turnovers because turnovers aren't something I normally make. And as I was looking at it, it looks like a pasty. And I don't know if there's a difference between a pasty and a turnover, but if you know what a pasty is, it's like the original Hot Pocket. And it's really popular in the south of England in Cornwall area. And as I'm looking at this, it looks pretty darn close to what a pasty would be. Now it says this feeds 4 people. There's 4 servings, but there's not a lot here. I'm wondering if this is mostly the crust, if the bulk of the dish is just bread with a little bit of tasty bits inside just as help. Because it definitely doesn't seem like split between 4 people, this would make a very hearty meal. But, you know, we'll see. Let's go to the cutting board.
To begin with, we start with 2 cooked leeks, or in this case, the equivalent amount of scallions, because my produce department did not seem to have leeks on the shelf, and scallions do offer a pretty close second in flavor, so it worked out pretty well. The original recipe does call for the leeks to be pre-cooked before we put them in the turnovers, but that's because leeks tend to be tough, especially the thicker the stalks they are. So I just left my scallions alone. Then I weighed out an 8-ounce potato and sliced and diced it, and while I was slicing it, I had a pot on the stove of boiling water, getting ready to parboil these. Now these you do need to parboil, otherwise you're going to just have really crunchy bits in your turnovers. That's really not fun. So make sure you do parboil those. Then I had cooked up 4 ounces of bacon, knowing full well this is American bacon, not British rasher bacon, which comes from the pork loin rather than the pork belly. And I saved the drippings, which turned out to be a perfect even 3 ounces that I needed for the recipe of bacon drippings. For the crust, we take 12 ounces of flour, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, a pinch of salt, which I recently just learned that they say it's about a 1/4 teaspoon, and then I mixed that together just to get it mixed. And then I took my 3 ounces of bacon drippings. You can use cooking oil, again, butter, whatever, some kind of fat to bind this together, and I used a fork instead of my hands for the sake of the video. Normally I would just use my hands to get this nice and crumbly. And then I took as much water, or in this case milk, as you'd need to make the mixture soft but not super sticky. You can always add more flour if you get it super sticky after you turn it onto the cutting board, but it's so much easier to just get the right amount in the bowl before you turn it out. It's a lot less mess as well, and I think I used probably 1/2 to 3/4 cup of milk. I didn't really measure this, it was just more making sure that it was looking like biscuit dough. Then once you have it mixed around well enough, turn it out onto your cutting board. See how much flour you need for your cutting board. Sometimes you don't need any, but in this case I did need some. And make sure you roll it into somewhat of a circle so you can cut it into 4 equal parts. Then take each part and roll it into a tiny ball, and then take your rolling pin and roll it into tiny little, what looks like tiny little pie crusts, because that's basically what we're making, is tiny little savory pies. Then grab your interior ingredients, and I tried my best to portion them out equally since I was making 4 of them. I think by the end, when my last one, I ended up getting a little shy of what should have been in there, but that's all right. It was an experiment. Then do your best to pinch the ends together. I can make them look really good on pizza dough, but biscuit crust, I had a little issue. It looks all right. Then put it in the oven at 350 degrees for 25 minutes, and there you go.
Okay, so let's try this thing. This is super hot. I don't know if you can see the hole. You can see the steam. It smells pretty good. So it's basically turned out how I thought it would. It's basically stuff in a biscuit. It's pretty doughy, but not in a bad way. It's like biscuity doughy. And there's your insides. So the first thing that's really noticeable to me was there was no gravy. There was no sauce. There was no anything at all in it. So it's just filling in bread. I'm anticipating this being a little dry. Maybe the bacon grease will help. This is so hot. This is dry. But it's good. It's actually really good. Just dry. Now, as far as food rationing goes, I made 4 of these, and my 2 oldest kids ate the other 3. I made them hold this one out so I could show you what this was. But it's very, very good. It's got a lot of filling in it, and you know, for a budget meal, I'm not mad at this at all. And I mean, honestly, get one of those gravy packets from the store and just have that as dipping sauce, or pour it over and eat it with a fork, and it's basically biscuits with stuff. It's pretty good. So this is pretty much a take on a Cornish pasty, which has been around forever, like we had mentioned earlier in the video. And there are obviously many, many, many ways to make Cornish pasties. Traditionally, there's a certain way, and if you go to the Cornish Pasty Association website, they'll tell you exactly how to make it correctly, but I have seen them where they put lots and lots of different things in it. So during wartime, I would assume that the people down in the Cornwall region probably would have been making these their own way anyways. This was just a recipe for the common housewife to be able to make a cheap meal out of not a lot of stuff. And you know, I'm not mad at it. It's pretty good, and you know, who can say no to bacon? There's not a lot in there, but the flavor's pretty good. And that's not bad. It just needs gravy. Badly. I need some water. Assuming a frugal housewife would have some sort of drippings or gravy left over from a previous meal that maybe could sauce this up a little bit. I do know that the recipe in Mrs. Beaton's household management book from 1861 has a recipe for Cornish pasties, and I've actually made that before, and they are really good. But she includes gravy inside, and it's like a pot pie. It's like a hot pocket pot pie, but way better. But these are definitely something that I don't think I'd mind making again. I would just make some alterations to it. So I'm gonna finish this now. I hope you found this interesting and helpful, and maybe you learned something. But I'm gonna go make some gravy and go finish this. Thanks for watching. If you've made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it. I really am having a lot of fun with this, and I want this to just be something that I love, and I'd love to have a community that loves it with me. Like and subscribe if you made it this far, and I will hope to see you next week.